Hello everyone, and welcome to another lore video for my webcomic work in progress, Knights of the Five Realms. First up, an announcement real quick. If you haven't seen it on my Instagram page already, I will be at the new anime convention in Palmer, HanabiCon, May 25th through 27th, and I will be there in the Artist Alley, so if you're in Alaska, make sure to grab passes while they're still available. The guests so far include Olivia Hack, Jenny Kwan, Katero Colbert, as well as a bunch of local artists and vendors. I'll be selling some prints and talking about the story and hopefully getting some people interested, much like I'm trying to do right now. So the link will be in the description below. Today I'll be talking about the Sprites, one of the 5 elf kinds in the series. There's some very interesting events in their story, but before we get into it, please hit that like and subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Without further ado, let us begin. In order to understand the early history of the Sprites, and indeed most of the other elf kinds, we need to explore beyond the borders of the 5 realms. We need to go beyond the northern continent, beyond the edges of where most elven maps stop. We're going to have to go beyond the isthmus of Arkarangal, which I mentioned last time, all the way to the southern continent. Though it has been long forgotten, this is where all elves come from, descended from one original tribe. As the population grew, the original tribe split, forming the elf kinds we know today: the grass elves, the sand elves, the Sprites, the gray elves, and the Yeti, along with others who've not survived the ages. The Sprites, together with the grass elves and sand elves, form a clade that is often referred to as the first elves, diverging sometime before the group that includes the gray elves and the Yeti. The Sprites diverged earliest amongst the second elves, when their population was divided between the Elder Steppe and the Forest of the Gods. Living in the forest, the Sprites developed most of the traits they now possess. They became small and nimble and were mostly nomadic, only building small communal shelters and temples for occasional gatherings. Think things like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, but in a forest setting. It is thought that they gave up eating meat during this time as well, preferring plants, mushrooms, and kelp harvested from nearby shores. While the steppe elves began planting crops and herding livestock, the Sprites never developed agriculture and retained a forager lifestyle. As idyllic as this seems, it was not so. Something lurked in the forest, terrorizing the Sprites, subjugating them to cruel punishments. One Sprite chieftain, Anjor of Clan Duil, lost his entire family to this long-forgotten bane. Fearing for the safety of his people, he gathered the clans together and formed a plan, and they worked together in secret to build a great vessel that could carry them across the sea. Once it was complete, they set sail for the north. It is said that they were pursued and that a great spirit provided them safe passage. Eventually, they reached the shores of a different forest, Epicria. It was already inhabited by the Yeti, whose chieftains ruled as nobles under the Goldarond Empire. Anjor was brought before these Yeti chieftains, seeking asylum from his homeland. Recognizing that the Sprites would not compete with them for resources, the Yeti allowed them to stay. Anjor of Clan Duil would come to be known as Anjor the Great, and his name would be passed down through his line, and lend itself to the Bay of Anjor, which we also discussed in the last video. The Sprites' role during the events leading to the fall of the Goldarond Empire was complex. They primarily remained neutral in the conflicts that were arising all over the 5 realms, but were active on issues relating to the forest. In the spring of the year 15456, and don't worry about that date, I'll do a video eventually explaining the calendar and timeline. But in the year 15456, King Onralagan approved the construction of Elviagor, a city in the northwest part of the forest, angering many of the forest's residents who felt a Yeti chieftain should have been appointed instead, and that the crown was encroaching on their lands. This started one of the earliest rebellions, the Yeti Sprite Rebellion, though this was still mostly peaceful compared to what would come later. The later king Arlaxigor would seek to appease the forest residents when he approved the construction of Elvale near the coast, and he appointed Lord Bargor of Clan Dweel, a descendant of Anjor the Great, to be its ruler. This would not stop future generations from going to war. For many centuries, tensions brewed in the east, and the conflict eventually reached Epicria. An allied force of the Eastern Elves vanquished the Varan kings of Golderond, exiling them into the north. Though most of the Yeti had already left to colonize the mountains at this point, some who were still in Epicria helped to march into the cities of Eluine and Elviugor to drive out the Grey Elf rulers who had lived there. These battles ended quickly. The far bloodier battles in the east had depleted much of the Crown's forces, and so the Sprites and Yeti were met with little resistance. The Earls of Eluine and Elviugor were allowed to leave peacefully, and the Yeti left Epicria in full control of the Sprites. The current chieftain of Clan Dweel, Elisal, daughter of Bareg II, was chosen to become Queen of Epicria. Fast forward to the time of the modern story, the year 38,000. The Forest Kingdom now prospers under the rule of High King Smelga IV and his wife, Queen Emeleska. They have a solitary daughter, Elisella, who is the crown princess. Smelga's brother Velagus and his wife Anyana also have a solitary daughter, Princess Angelina. She was named after three great queens of Epicria, starting with Queen Angelina I. Queen Angelina was named after her father, who is named after another great sprite, Anjor. Princess Angelina is a small and humble sprite, still only a child, but there is a greatness hidden within her. She possesses the heart and name of Epicria's oldest hero. Knights of the Five Realms will be her journey to discover that courage. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this foray into the history of the Sprites and the Kingdom of Epicria. I wanted to do this one first because that's where the main character is from, and a lot of the supporting characters as well. I hope you all enjoyed meeting Angelina, if briefly. I will definitely go more in depth on her and other characters in the future, and of course as the webcomic itself eventually starts up, hopefully soon, you'll all get to see her in action. I still don't know when that will be. I am writing and drawing the comic entirely on my own, so it does take quite a while. I'll keep everyone updated as I go, and maybe even make some process videos along the way. In the meantime, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that bell for notifications, and of course if you're in Alaska, get your passes for HanabiCon. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay, bye! They primarily remained neutral in the conflict. He appointed his young son to drive out the Grey Elf rulers who had been there. To dry out... They have a solitary daughter, Elisella, who is the crown princess. Smelga's